let's get straight into it and talk about the Brisbane Lions and the Melbourne Football Club. This was an upset win. From halfway through the third quarter, it looked like it was all the Lions. Jimmy, take us through the Lexus of Blackburn key moments.
Yeah, you're right, Tom. And I think it's the way Melbourne played. They played a pretty good style of footy anyway. They were able actually to play the front half game against the Brisbane Lions, and that's where the game was won. They outscored Brisbane Lions 62-17 in the front half, which is not traditionally the way Melbourne likes to win games. It's normally stoppage and clearance. Eric Hipwood kicked the Lions off in great fashion with that big roost. Trent Rivers, walking the tightrope along the goal line and boundary line to kick his, and Cozzy Pickett, one of the most dangerous players in the ground, kicking a goal to cut the margin to 8 points midway through the third quarter. And they just kept at it, Melbourne, and Max Gawn in particular in the last quarter, as we've said many a times, big contested marks, big possessions, and they just played the game in their front half pretty much for the whole entire last quarter. Jake Melksham, who we'll touch on a little bit later, was magnificent in his role, but also hitting the scoreboard. Bailey Fritsch being the super sub, and it was a pretty effective one, and a tall, lean-looking Nathan Jones being Aidan Johnson absolutely flushed that one off the ground. Langdon's left foot snap, and they just kept surging and surging, the Demons, and they were the ones that were full of run. I don't think there's any major concerns for the Lions. They're still second on the ladder. If you look at this point last year, we'll think, will the Lions make the 8? They've got plenty to work on, but they're sitting in second. So a great win. Said more about Melbourne, pretty gritty. Again, Oliver had a tagging role or a run with a head-to-head role.
Do you like that on a weekly basis, just quickly on Lachie Neale this week?
Well, I actually think it took him to the ball. There was a couple of instances where Oliver got the footy while he was tracking Neale, and there was a turnover and error, and he was in a great position. So Oliver had 23, 7 clearances and a goal. Neale still had his 30, but I think it brought Oliver into the game.
Yeah, I do like it. I think it's really good coaching by Simon Goodwin to actually make Oliver bring up his work rate, get him to the ball, because when he's around the ball, he wins the ball in really good places. So I think it's actually fantastic coaching. What I was really impressed with Melbourne was that forward half game. When 21 entries to 9, forward 50 entries to 9 that last quarter, they played the game where they wanted to play it and you score goals. Melbourne have struggled to get it in, but when they get it in, it's bounced straight back out. This week was a really different performance.
Yeah, but Brisbane score in all manners. We know that. That's why they're the premiership side and been in a couple of grand finals. But they're only kicked one goal from a front half intercept. That's not normally them, so that's a big tick to Melbourne. Their ball use coming out of the back half and didn't live back there.
So Melbourne are 4 and 6. They're just one game outside the 8. Remarkably, their season is very much still alive after they were 0-5. I think they were a few weeks ago. 10 weeks ago, Jimmy, you sat on this desk on Footy Furnace and you talked us through why Melbourne couldn't get the job done against the GWS Giants, and they learnt their lesson today. This is you about 3 months ago.
So, as we say, it takes it at 2:20. By the time that wears down, we're at about 1:50. Could they work to find another mark? So it doesn't have to be forward, doesn't have to be close to the goal. It can be backwards, because then you own the game. Very worst case scenario, you kick that one deep towards the point post.
Yep.
And again, we've got Max Gawn back in the game with Oliver Petrarca. You pack up the stoppages.
So this is what happened tonight, and it feels like, Jimmy, they were listening to you 10 weeks ago.
Well, I put the same shirt on just to make sure we had the same sort of conversation back then. Look, it wasn't quite the same, but I love how Cozzy thought his way through that, because what have we got? 1:40 to go. If you just keep the ball there and you don't need the extra score and you wind down the clock, Petrarca goes back and has a shot, but immediately Brisbane got the ball up the other end of the ground and they turned it over. But you still just leave the door slightly ajar. So all I was asking 3 months ago, and in this case, which they did adjust, is you own the game. You can actually take a lot of time off the clock. You find a mark. That guy takes a lot of time off the clock, and you can chew a minute. So if Petrarca went back, and if they kept working really hard, Melbourne, and they found another one, game's over. There's not even the slightest sniff.
I think you're being humble. I think they were listening to you. You could sense they didn't want to have a shot for goal, but the real worry about that footage is your shirt, Jimmy. Have you got another shirt? It's the same one.
No, just the same way. We need to increase the budget here on the Footy.
Oh, no, okay.
Hey, Hirdy, how did Melbourne set up tonight that allowed them to win?
I love that. The reason they were able to keep it in their back half, their forward half in that last quarter, is the way they set up when the ball went in. If you have a look at this footage, Brisbane love getting the ball off the line, taking it through you. Max Gawn took 3 really important marks in the last quarter and put it back into forward 50. Look at this footage here, Jimmy, or this photo here. There are no outlets for Brisbane to get out. All the Melbourne players on the outside. There's no holes from the middle of the ground, and the only option is to kick the ball down the line, back down the line to Max Gawn.
Yeah, and the one that grabs my attention too is, I forget who the Lions player is down there at full back, and it might have been Petty if we can wind it back. The fact is, so many sides give that one up because it doesn't seem... So just here, I think that's Petty there with the red boots at the top of the square. Apologies, it's a bit blurry. But you're not taking that. I reckon too many sides give that up at key moments, because what that actually does is it allows Brisbane to get out the far side of the ground. But just in isolation, you think, oh, that's not too sexy. That's all right. We'll give that back. But because that's closed, the only place you can go, and you've got the 45 blocked, is long down the line, and you bring in one of the best players we've seen in recent times to mark the ball down.
And everyone would say, why are you kicking it back to Max Gawn? But Dunkley had no other option, because he wasn't. It's 3 minutes 38, I think 10 points down. He wants to get it out the other side, but the setup means he couldn't. Max Gawn takes an easy mark, settles the game down, and they go back in for another entry.
Jake Melksham's a player whose career looked all but over a couple of years ago when he ruptured his ACL, but he was at his best tonight, kicked 4 goals, Jimmy.
Yeah, and he's played on Harris Andrews. So he actually had the role to play on him, but not completely negative. So he made sure Harris Andrews didn't actually win and intercept the game, because we know he's one of the great game wreckers. Kept him to 10 disposals and 5 intercepts. Now people go, well, that's a key defender. We don't count them, as far as how many touches they get. But the role he plays, Andrew's setting up. But then the great thing is Melksham kicked 4 goals himself, which is a magnificent effort.
He's improved. I mean, to the point that Jake Melksham is now as a half forward or a forward is incredible. I remember putting him there back in his early years, his first couple of years, he's played on the wing, went forward, had no idea how to find the ball. But the player he's become at Melbourne is just sensational. That was a really disciplined performance. To kick goals off the back of that was fantastic.
And a match-winning performance as well, crucial to the D's win. Hirdy, take us through the Leicester Blackburn key moments for Richmond versus North Melbourne. Oh, we're going West Coast. We're going West Coast first. Sorry, my apologies. We're going over to the West, where West Coast had their first win of the season and a critical win as well. Andrew McQualter's first win as senior coach and the club's first win in 11 games. It broke a pretty bad drought for them. Yeah,
fantastic win in emotional circumstances for the West Coast Eagles, obviously, with what happened during the week. But, West Coast have been performing badly, but under pressure. Jamie Cripps here snapping his first of West Coast goals, his first quarter goals. Mason Wood running around the man on the mark to kick a goal from just inside 50. Fantastic play. And Harley Reid, a lot of criticism through the year, but a goal on the run from outside 50. And the celebration with Tim Kelly, well, they've practiced that a few times. Maybe the Hawks been giving them some touches. Oscar Allen kicking a set shot and goal, and his teammates getting around him after the turmoil that he's been in. And then it was back to the Saints. The Saints came back. They didn't die down. Jack Higgins snapping a goal to keep the Saints in touch just before three-quarter time. And if you look at Brady Hoff, kicking his first goal in the AFL footy, his teammates got right around him, very happy for him. And again, Harley Reid, what a beautiful mark that was. Very powerful, explosive player. We look at it again from another angle.
On his own teammate as well,
We're
Oscar Allen.
We're going to see a lot of that over his time. Jack Higgins again, perfect snap for goal. Unfortunately, not enough. Bit too little, too late. And Flying Ryan. What a player he is. Love to see when Liam Ryan gets the ball and goes at goal.
Yeah, Harley Reid with the hanger then helps up Oscar Allen. And if you were to just look at stats alone, St Kilda probably had the 3 best players on the ground. Higgins kicks 5, Sinclair 38, Rowan Marshall dominated the game with 27, 18 contested. But the Eagles had an even spread across the board and played that way. And you mentioned Brady Hoff, got to run through the midfield. He's normally been doing shutdown roles and played pretty well.
The Eagles' forward half game was on display tonight as well, Jimmy.
It was, and this has been the big area for improvement. We spoke about the Kangaroos last year when they were battling. Where can you find wins and focus? Yep. And it's actually been the front half game, that front half press, trying to turn the footy over. That's a good place to turn the ball over. And you look in the last 3 rounds, they're first in the competition for front half intercepts. Now they're scoring off the back of them. A couple of weeks ago they got belted, but they were able to actually turn over the footy. So really positive signs for Minnie McQualter there. Just got to keep converting once they turn them over like they did tonight.
Well, I think congratulations to Andrew McQualter. His first win. I think he'll be having a glass of red or a beer or something and just sit down and say, finally I got one.
Just a word on the Saints. They've had a pretty ordinary 6 weeks. Yep. Where do you see them at the moment, Hirdy?
I think they've shown some improvement at certain times. Their defensive side of their game's been better. They attack better. But even last week against Carlton, they weren't able to attack through Carlton. I just think they're a team that's going to come up a bit, down a bit. They still haven't got the list right. I think they're still trying to prune the list, get new players in. Obviously with Tom de Koning being their big recruit, but not just Tom. I think they want higher quality players to come in, particularly younger players as those senior players get older. For me, they're not quite the team that can make the finals.
The maturity from a couple of their last few drafts and this draft, who are good ball users attacking, to add to more than just Wanganeen, Malera and Sinclair, who can take the game forward. We know they can defend. It'll take a bit of time to get the attacking side to have a bit more flow to it.
Is Tom de Koning the one they should go for? Is that going to change the whole landscape for them?
Rowan Marshall's a pretty good player. I'm just fascinated. Does de Koning come in, mean Marshall goes, or they think that both are going to stay?
But would you spend the reportedly 1.7 a year on Tom de Koning?
I'm not spending 1.7 if I've already got Rowan Marshall.
So it's a no.
I'm just saying, I'm just fascinated how they see playing out. They know better than I do.
And they need to re-sign Wanganeen Miller as well. That's a decision.
Absolutely.
That's a decision for him, not about money or even about the football club. It's about where he wants to live, whether he wants to go home to South Australia or stay in Victoria. Hey, moving scenes today, Hirdy, as well in Perth regarding Adam Selwood after his tragic passing yesterday. There was a moment's silence before the game. Really emotive stuff, given what we've seen over the past 3 months with Troy Selwood, his twin brother, and now Adam. And there's two current West Coast players that played alongside Adam Selwood. One is Jamie Cripps, who you see there, who paid tribute to him after he kicked a goal. And the other is Jeremy McGovern. Jack Darling, of course, is North Melbourne. Just scenes you don't want to see. But it is, to take one positive out of it, amazing the way that West Coast paid tribute to their 2006 Premiership player.
Absolutely, it's just a very sad, very sad day. And I don't know the family, but I think everyone feels very, very strongly that this is something that shouldn't happen. And
there were scenes yesterday as well, and also after today's game, when players and coaches got extremely emotional. Craig McRae said he didn't know Adam Selwood too well himself, but he does work alongside Scott Selwood as an assistant coach at Collingwood, and he broke down after the match at the MCG.
We told the whole club straight after the game the sadness, and just want to send my love to the Selwood family. Thanks, guys.
I know it's great to win a game of footy, but we've lost the legend of our club, and just want to send all love and support to the Selwood family. Mental health is such a massive thing in society at the moment. I've struggled with my own mental battles this year, and I've been so fortunate to have such a great support crew around me to have my back throughout everything we've gone through. I just urge anyone out there who's struggling with anything, please reach out. Helplines, friends, reach out to each other, because we're heartbroken, and we just want to offer all the love and support we can to the Selwood family in this time.
Yeah, it's well said. It's very well said. But and this is Adam Selwood, very, very sad. This is a bigger issue. This is a bigger issue than one person, two people. And there's a bigger discussion than tonight. But the support that past players get after they retire, when they get to 40, when they get to 50, I just don't think it's there. I think a lot of players get through their careers, they get out and they're fine. But there are a lot that aren't. And I really believe that more needs to be done by the AFL, the AFLPA, the players, the clubs, to help players who haven't quite filled the void that AFL football had for them.
So we did a story on 9 News about a month ago. The AFL Players Association gives free support to any former AFL player and their partner, and I got messages from former AFL players. They didn't know that. So that support is out there from the Players Association, but it's about spreading that awareness. Yeah,
this is not a criticism of the AFLPA, because I do genuinely believe the AFLPA do a great job across a lot of different parts, and having been a benefit of that myself. But then more needs to be done. More and more players who had full-time careers, who didn't have anything else in their life, any trade, any education, have got to a point in their life where self-worth, identity is not there. And I just think that more needs to be done, because a lot of these players have done great things for the game and they need some help.
Well said, Hirdy, and we'll explore more of that on Footy Classified on Tuesday night with Eddie Maguire, of course, and Brad Scott as the special guest. Our thoughts here at Footy Furnace and Channel 9 are, of course, with the Selwood family and all of those that were close to Adam across his time in the AFL industry. All right, also on Channel 9 tomorrow night is Players, a show that's taking the world by storm. Jack Crisp is a guest, as is Jack Higgins, who kicked 5 goals today for St Kilda. He's on fire this year, the small forward. We'll get to that in a few moments' time. Don't miss Players tomorrow night after Footy Classified, and also on YouTube in the evening. Great episode last week with Harley Reid going from strength to strength. On the buzzer, Jeremy Cameron kicked his 7th. It's his all-time best in a game, and he helped sink Port Adelaide yesterday in Adelaide by 76 points. Ken Hinkley spoke after the match.
That's why people will come to those conclusions, and some of the losses have been quite big, significantly big. But I don't think it's a transition moment. I think it's it's a come to terms with what's really, really important for you and play it for long periods of most games. Now, as I said, we're not terrible, but we've had some terrible losses.
So, Port Adelaide's on one hand. Jeremy Cameron was the hottest hand of the round thanks to Alexis of Blackburn for a reason. Kicked 5 goals in the last quarter, 7 goals after quarter time. But Ken Hinkley is what I want to talk about, Jimmy. What do you make of what you're seeing at Port at the moment?
They throw in the towel at the moment, and it's pretty simple. And Ken tried to dance around the fact that, we've had some bad losses, but we're not bad. But I saw too much of what we're seeing here, and I could have picked out about 20 of these edits and gone back to some other games which they've lost by 91, 90 and 76. So you get the sense with Port Adelaide, once they they go 3 goals down and you're around three-quarter time, they're done, and they'll just, just go through the motions. Look at the amount of players in all these shots who are just walking. So they're really intent to fight it out. Like, I know the game's lost at different times, but it's just disappointing, and I think there's an excuse for the players in the back of their head. Oh, we're in transition between coaches, so they'll really have to go. Is Aaliyah really wanting to come up and defend that? There's too many players on their side where you think, you know what, if we can just stretch the rope a little bit, it'll break pretty quickly.
So you're saying they give up?
Well, if you're getting beaten by those sort of margins, and let's go through their last quarters in 25. Lost it by 21, lost it by 9, lost it by 18. Not bad against the Saints, lost by 1, lost by 3 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals, 8 goals.
So it's the point is not that they're losing by a goal or two, is that they haven't won a last quarter this year. Oh, that's incredible stats.
But if you're playing against sides, you actually set your reputation. So sides who never give up build that reputation, where other sides get jumpy, go, oh, here they come. So we go back a couple of years ago with Collingwood. Here comes under Craig McRae. Here comes the Pies.
Yeah.
But you have the reverse of that. Hey, if we keep cracking away, they're going to break.
But the criticism of Port has been their emotional team. They get up for the emotional games, they fall down when it's not
Save
emotional.
Kenny game.
Yeah, the save Kenny game when it's emotional. The best teams in the competition, the Collingwoods, the Brisbane and Geelong who they played, yes, they play on emotion to a certain extent, but you can't just arrive on emotion. That pressure has to come week in, week out. The structure, you just look at the way the ball just got turned over and went straight through. There was no setup behind the ball. Structure and setup needs to come with emotion. And I think with Ken, he said what did they say? We have bad days, we're not a bad team. But if you do things bad enough for long enough, then you become a bad team.
Oh, I can accept that excuse, of course, off the weekend when you lose some key players with soft tissue injuries, which you'll touch on.
But Geelong lost them as well.
Yeah, of course. But how then do you excuse the game against the Bulldogs and the Pies and many of these other teams?
Qualifying final last year.
Yeah, and the many others we highlight. So, yeah, once off, you get a pass, maybe twice, but it's now a pattern.
So is there a chance that they're just not that good, Hirdy, and that this coaching transition is all but done?
Well, they made a prelim last year, so they were a good team last year, but they haven't performed this year. I think with the look, and I'm not trying to retire Ken Hinkley because everyone I know who's coached with him or been coached by him says he's a magnificent coach and a really good person. So, but you have to think that as soon as they think they're out of the finals, that transition, whether it's happening in public or in private, is absolutely happening. Because if you can get, Josh Carr can get a certain amount of months or time or games before the start of next year, where he's putting his plan onto the players. I think that'll be beneficial.
So they're 4 and 6, and Freo, Giants, Melbourne, Sydney to come. It's not an especially easy run, but it's not a hard run either.
Well, it's all the sides around them.
Yeah.
So it'll show whether they're at the top of those sides around them, because if you go through the ladder, Freo on the outside looking in, Giants just inside the 8, the D's are just above them, and the Swans, because of their win, go up. So we'll find out whether they sit at the bottom of that group.
But does it matter? I mean, if they beat those teams, they sit at the bottom of the worst group. Does it actually?
No.
I know you want to win. I'm not saying it's not important to win, but whether you finish two places outside the 8 or whether you finish 4 places outside the 8, it's not about, to me, when they beat those teams, they have to start playing a certain style of football that's consistent week in, week out, and we just haven't seen that.
So Port Adelaide clearly respect Ken Hinkley. They allowed the succession plan to come in.
And he respects Port Adelaide too.
He respects Port Adelaide. But at what point do you walk into Ken Hinkley's office and say, we're going to go with Josh Carr this week, your time's done?
I think when they know the finals are done.
Okay.
I think when the finals are over, whether it's an actual official handover or it's an unofficial behind the scenes, there needs to be time to actually set the year up for next year.
Jimmy?
That's pretty fair.
Yep. Well, they're 4 and 6, so we'll see what happens in the next few weeks, but it's certainly a discussion point that keeps rearing its head this year, as does the hamstrings. Yesterday there was 4 before half-time. Quite incredible. Jason Horne-Francis, Jones, Bowes and Danger as well. So Horne-Francis will miss 2 to 3. We're waiting to see what happens with Jones. He'll have scans in the next 24 hours. Bowes is the same as well. He'll have scans tomorrow. But Dangerfield's the big one. So Geelong are hoping it's not too serious. I reckon the most likely scenario is we'll miss the next 2 and back for Gold Coast in round 13. He does a soft tissue every year about this point. They're not too concerned that it's going to be too serious, but he'll have scans tomorrow. He's such an important player for them. And I just wonder how much his absence helped Jeremy Cameron yesterday in sort of a perverse way.
Oh, I think a lot. I think, you've got 2 keys and it gave Jeremy Cameron a bit more space. There's no doubt that Jeremy had more space, and a lot of his goals came after half-time and 5 in the last quarter when Danger wasn't there. So obviously they want Danger to be there, but it does give Jeremy Cameron a bit more freedom to roam that forward line.
One to watch for this week against the Dogs as well is Bailey Smith. The Bailey Smith Cup will be amazing on Thursday night. Against his old team. So
he was pretty poor too, wasn't he, on the weekend? He had 30 and...
Only 30 for himself.
That's right.
Yeah. Let's move on on now to the MCG today, where North Melbourne won their first game at that venue since 2017. The margin was 4 points. They were holding on for dear life, North Melbourne. They almost found a way to lose it, but in the end, they were just too good for the Tigers. Take us through the Lexus of Blackburn key moments, Hirdy.
Well, there's no doubt the Roos have been improving. I mean, last week drawing with the reigning premier in Brisbane, they really have improved. It was the Camden McIntosh's 200th game, and he got to lead that famous headband, lead the team out with his kids there. But Colin McKercher kicking North Melbourne's sixth goal of the first quarter, put them 23 points up at quarter time. And you thought, how far to North? But then Hugo Ralph-Smith stepped in, kicking a goal of the year contender early in the second quarter. Cam Zurhaar snapping a goal as he does, and then Toby Pink. This tackle, we'll talk about this tackle in a minute, but this is how you tackle from behind. Fantastic tackle. Camden McIntosh putting Richmond a point ahead early in the fourth term, and you thought at that stage that Richmond may be coming back, but Wardlaw and Zurhaar combining to set up Nick Larkey to put North Melbourne in front for the final time. Tom Lynch tried his hardest and kicking this goal, tried to bring them back into the game, but unfortunately the Richmond Footy Club left it too late, and North Melbourne won the game. Toby Pink was fantastic in the way he read the play and actually intercept mark. We'll just see this example of this one here on a very good player in Lynch. Maybe that's a push in the back. Eddie Maguire would not be happy with that. And the final siren. North Melbourne, I think, is the second win for the... Was it second win for the year?
Yeah, second win.
Second win for the year. You can see how much it means to the group, and you can see them building. They've definitely been playing better over the past month and been rewarded with a win.
Well, let's go back to Toby Pink highlights. You showed the mark and the tackle, but he stepped up when they needed to be, and of course, they're trying to find combinations to work down back North Melbourne. Of course, Comben, has been the intercept defender, but you need someone to play on the last line, and he had a really good game, good moments as well, but you mentioned the tackle as well.
I was as outraged as everyone when Paul Curtis had the tackle. I was outraged. It was ruining the game. It couldn't happen. But players learn. And this is what the AFL's asking players to do. I know it may not have been possible in the Paul Curtis situation, but that tackle, the way he was able to just pull him down and turn him, is what the AFL wants. And players are pretty quick to learn how to look after their opposition, but also how not to get suspended, because that's your career. You've missed 3 weeks. It's a big part of your career. Jimmy, I sense that you don't agree entirely with my point of view there.
No, I think accents, there's still place for accents in the game.
Yeah, but was that a better technique than Paul Curtis, or there's no difference?
They're just different scenarios. We just judge them all individually.
I think that's a no.
Yeah, that's okay. You're allowed to disagree sometime. The game was tight and contested, Hirdy, and the pressure was really high.
It was a high-pressure game. It was a high-quality game. And, sides get criticised in the bottom ladder for poor skills, this and that, and not having the pressure. But I just love the way these two teams went about it, and it was a really high-quality game. I
love the game of Ralph Smith and Lawler as well for Richmond. Last week, we lost Robert Walls as well. The AFL industry is mourning a coaching and playing great. He's an AFL Hall of Fame member for a reason, and we sadly lost him early in the week. And there was many great tributes that flowed throughout the last few days. Hirdy, did you ever come across Robert Walls in your travels?
I did, and I was on... Wolsey and Kevin Sheedy were adversaries. I mean, everyone knows they had some blues as players and in the media and as coaches, and I played against Wolsey as a coach when he was a coach a number of times, whether it was Brisbane or Richmond, and I was always on Camp Sheedy basically as Wolsey was adversary, and not that I thought less of him as a person, but it was always Sheeds was right, Wolsey was wrong. So there's a fair bit of headbutting. You go on radio and you think, oh, I've got Wolsey, and he's going to have a go at us. But so Camp Sheedy, I was fortunate enough to run into Wolsey at a East Melbourne cafe about the middle of last year with Mike Sheen and a couple of other people, and sat down and chat with him for about an hour, and it was a really enjoyable chat. So, to the Walls family, I'm really sorry for what's happened, but he was a wonderful man, and just that hour I had with him, and very pleased I got to know him over that coffee.
Well said. I'm glad you're able to break bread eventually. Yeah. Team Sheedy's certainly a fun place to be over the journey.
I actually saw Sheeds on Friday, and we had a chat about Wolsey, and Sheeds said it was all fun and games, and he really enjoyed that relationship. So you'd never read into it too much what you see on TV. Great
reflections, Hirdy. Well said. So our thoughts tonight, of course, are with the family and the close friends of Robert Walls, and of course with Adam Selwood, as we mentioned earlier. Back with Footy Furnace after the break. Welcome back to Footy Furnace. Let's talk about the smashing at Marvel Stadium last night. 91 points was the margin in favour of the Western Bulldogs. It was a dominating display from the very start to the very finish, and this was exemplified, Hirdy, with the performance of Bailey Dale, who had 49 disposals without attending one centre bounce. And I look at the other names on that screen. I reckon he's the only player on that screen to not attend a centre bounce when he gets that many disposals. Quite remarkable.
Yeah, it was quite remarkable. And what it showed is that Essendon's whole ground defence is still not right. They can defend their back 50, but allowing Ballydale to have 49 possessions is just not on.
The amount of kids who keep putting their hand up at any junior team saying, I want to play inside mid. You want to play on the half-back flank in today's football because it was a week of metres gained and stuffing the stat sheet from the half-back flank.
More than 1,000 metres gained, and that gets us to the word of Hirdy.
Thanks, Tom. I almost went too early on my own segment, but we'll get there. But just want to have a look at how Ballydale got those 49 possessions and let's have a look at who was playing on him for most of the time. And if you look at the graphic down below, Ben Hobbs, 32 minutes, 17 disposals. Nick Martin, 26 minutes, 13 disposals. Archie Perkins, 19 minutes, 12 disposals. Now, that's a lot off half-back. He's getting the ball. How does a player who's playing off half-back not be sat on? I mean, I can understand Nick Martin, he goes and plays his own game. I think, in my opinion, Hobbs was probably sent to him. But it just exposes, if you look here at the footage, we look at Ballydale where he's coming from. He's coming off Essendon players. And what it shows to me is that if you're playing a defensive role on a player, as the ball's coming into your forward line, if you're playing a defensive role, you've got to have an eye running past Archie Perkins there to get the ball. You have to actually put your arm across and stop him doing it. This one we see here, this next one with Isaac Kako, and a young player, and I don't want to highlight him or criticise him too much, but if you just watch him get... There's Ballydale, there's Kako. Kako's looking at the ball, not looking at Ballydale. Fast forward it now, Kako doesn't start to run till Ballydale gets the ball. As any forward knows, or any small forward knows, your off-ball play, you've got to know, yes, the ball's there, I can't impact, where have I got to be? Too late to turn his head and do it. And it felt like all night that's what Essendon players are doing. They're actually fixated on the ball, but then if the ball goes out of the area, they haven't made an early decision.
He had 25 at half-time. So the long break is where you can do the most amount of adjusting in the game. And that's where you just go, you know what? This guy's just too good for us. We don't need to try and find another avenue goal through that position. We've got to limit his because he's going the other way. He had 26 handball receives. So as Hirdy's touching on, everyone knows the way Ballydale plays. He's been playing like that for a number of years since he's gone to the half-back flank. Don't get beaten by what you know. Like, limit his impact in some way.
37 uncontested possessions, 78% disposal efficiency. Coming into the game, he was the top 5 most damaging players with the ball. As Jimmy said, maybe up to half-time you understand, but after he's had 25, you put a lockdown player on him.
Jimmy, we talk about Essendon's defence every week. Clearly last night it wasn't at its best.
Yeah, look, they've been improving, but it's against the top 8 sides where you really want to test yourself, and the scores are just too big. We know where Essendon are at, and they know where they are, and so this is what they've got to zero in on. And we spoke about the spare defender for Essendon, and the problem is when you play against really good sides, they actually identify straight away when you've got the spare defender, and they're just much better at picking their way through. So the lesson is, and I keep harping on about this, when you have a spare defender, the spare has got to remain the spare. And I know that sounds really silly. It means everyone else goes a lot tighter when they're back there. But what happens against really good sides, they go, all right, Essendon's got the spare back. We're able to use our free coming through the middle of the ground, which the Dogs do and other top 8 sides. And then they just pick you apart. It just turns into that kicking drill you do, that kick inside forward 50.
And it goes to show with the amount of times that Essendon get shown up from exiting their forward 50, going all the way down the ground to their D50. They're one of the easiest teams to take it all the way down the ground in.
We'll have Brad Scott on Footy Classified on Tuesday night on the desk with Hirdy, me and Eddie Maguire. Looking forward to that. Let's move to the SCG. What night was it? Was it Thursday? No, Friday night. Where the Sydney Swans had a pretty important win against Carlton, it must be said. 16 points was the margin. We'll talk about Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner and their performances in a few moments' time. But let's zero in on Carlton and more specifically Michael Voss post-game.
Pretty pissed off, to be honest. We had the game where we wanted it and we couldn't finish off the game. You know, Heaney and Warner, we put a heap of effort into in our planning, and we couldn't get it done in the second half, and they got off the chain. The stats are there to tell the impact that they had.
So it felt to me like that plan they had was when Heaney or Warner went forward, McGovern would go to that player, and if one of them was in the middle, Hewitt or Cripps would go to them. But what they didn't have a plan for is that both of them went in the middle, or it just didn't seem like the plan worked. So they may have planned for it, and it's great to have plans, but the plan obviously didn't work because Heaney and Warner were absolutely sensational. And the difference in the game, did you see any evidence of the plan that Michael Voss was talking about being enacted or working?
No, it was tough to work out. Yeah, I saw those guys go over to them, but it didn't look like that their first priority was to limit their impact. It was still, OK, you and I are playing on each other and, let's go for it, the best. And, OK, you can run in with that plan, whereas you go head-to-head. But I think, and only they'd know, but I think they need to look at, say, some structural stuff. If you couldn't get it done individual match-up, well, what are we doing structurally to help that match-up? Are we bringing the contest in tighter, which means your two wings squeezing in to just add that extra bubble, so you have the inside contest, and then they at least have to come to it? Are you bringing a half forward up to cover off, or is the half-back just dropping off to catch them on the way through? So I don't know whether Carlton had that plan. It was hard to see, but only they could tell us that.
Early on, it looked like Cripps was actually doing a fair bit of damage in the forward line. He had a couple of shots at goal when Heaney was playing on him around stoppages, and Heaney was quite loose on him. But as the game went on, it just felt like that as the Swans got dominance and got first use of the ball, someone had locked down on Heaney. Cripps better than Heaney and Warner better than what they did.
It must be infuriating to be a Carlton supporter at the moment. 5 times this year, they've only lost 6 games, but 5 times they've led at half-time and lost the game, Jimmy.
More than that, Tom. 9 out of 10 games they've been leading at half-time, and they've only gone on to win 4 times.
Right.
So the only time that they've been down at half-time, of course, is the Adelaide Crows game, who pounded them as well. But they just fade away, and it's this grinding style that we know that they play. Yeah. We've critiqued them throughout the year, and it's nothing new, which makes it difficult for them to score when they get behind. It's around 60 to 70 points they tend to land on because they play contest-to-contest style of footy. It's admirable, we like it, but today's footy, forward handball, it's chain, it's speed on the game, it's then getting in behind it. That's the way the game's being played at the top end of the ladder.
I'd be more upset than the supporters if I was Michael Voss. If he's asked McGovern and Hewitt to do the job on those players and they haven't, Michael Voss was so... You don't see him, as you said...
Not publicly, no.
No, pissed off.
He was pointed, wasn't he?
And that, to me, was where he'd be pissed off.
Yeah.
Joel Hamling?
Yeah, so that was a plan the Swans had under Dean Cox. Joel Hamling, now the big key forward. Of course, he's played defence his whole life, but what was noticeable was the way he played Wiedering. Wiedering's been in super form, and where he hurts you the most is where he intercepts the footy or comes over and helps create, especially when he's that third man up or he just beats his direct opponent one-on-one. Hamling played him back shoulder the whole entire night. There is not one time where Hamling come up in front of Wiedering. Every single time there was a stop play, he'd go and take his back shoulder, and he was just happy to spoil the ball.
Yep.
Get the ball to ground because it was a slippery and greasy night, and it stopped Carlton because the previous week, of course, Carlton versus St Kilda, Wiedering, Haynes, McGovern, all those guys, Silvani, just intercepted the ball, so they took away the big monster on the back line.
Just an example of a play getting a job done as opposed to the Carlton blokes not getting the job done.
Yeah,
and it was very disciplined. Still got himself a goal as well.
Yeah, Justin McInerney will miss a week. He's been suspended by the MRO, and Joel Amati will miss 3 weeks as well. That game against Melbourne next week for the Swans looms large.